Well, Oregon should be able to handle Washington pretty easily this year, right?
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Everything you need to know about Washington for this year and the coming years coming up on today's show, which means we have my guy Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies, joining me here on the pod. Be nice, everybody, be nice, please. Let's keep this as civil as we can. But the betting line, Roman, is Oregon minus 19.5. I was surprised at first. Not that it was double digits. The game is at Autzen Stadium. It's at the end of the year. That shouldn't matter a ton. Oregon has much higher aspirations than Washington in 2024. The more I thought about it, the more I think that Oregon is capable of covering that number at home. You have the redemption factor, but Jedd Fisch even said at Big Ten Media Days, Washington is in a total rebuild here, and Oregon is very much not. I think that's the biggest difference between these two teams going into the season.
It certainly is. And that's one of the interesting things about this game where I remember, let's pull back the curtain here a little bit, Spencer. A couple months ago when all these lines came out, you texted me and you were like, have you seen the money line for this game? Shout out to our friends over at FanDuel. And I was like, no, and you made me guess, and I was way off. We don't need to go into where I was and everything on all that, but it's really interesting to think about all that and to think about where Washington is compared to where Oregon is. But I will say that I'm really intrigued by this Washington team. I know we're going to jump in more to some of the specific strengths, but I'm really intrigued to what this could look like because Washington under Jedd Fisch in this short term has shown that they have a really good coaching staff and that there are some really exciting pieces on this team. And early on in the year, I really want to see how they gel. And that's why I'm really excited the Big Ten has done, the whole move the protected rivalry to the end of the year sort of thing to have, Ohio State, Michigan, this game, all that in the same weekend, which makes it a lot of fun. And for, both of our sakes at this point, really, we get to see what our respective teams are going to look like for 11 games before we get to that point.
Yeah, and this line certainly could move by then. It's still, according to our friends at FanDuel, Oregon minus 19.5. The money line for the Ducks is minus 1450, and for Washington it is plus 810. I think those numbers have actually shifted since we last spoke on the matter, but as a Washington guy who certainly is riding high after the last three matchups that these two teams have had, are you just writing off any chance that Washington has of winning this game? Like, I know how Oregon fans feel about the game. Like, you should win, you better win, hope you keep your foot on the gas pedal and win it by 30 to 40 points if possible. But how does Washington feel about this year's matchup?
Right now, I can't say that anybody that I've spoken to, whether it be fans, fellow media members or anything, feels great about it, which is, unfortunate considering the way the last three matchups have gone. But it's like I just said, there's a lot of room between now and then where I think there are a lot of exciting building blocks for what this season could be. When, I think about a guy like Will Rogers, who throughout the last couple of weeks of practice has shown me exactly why Kalen DeBoer prioritized him in the transfer portal. And then Jedd Fisch was able to keep him around, where he's an experienced guy, where as long as he's got time behind the offensive line, which is certainly going to be the biggest question regarding all of this, where as long as Will Rogers can, show that he's got some time and get the ball in the hands of some really good playmakers in Jeremiah Hunter, in Denzel Boston, in Giles Jackson, that the offense is going to be good enough because of the scheme and because of just all the different things that Jedd Fisch showed during his time at Arizona. And then coupled with a really good defensive scheme that Steve Belichick has put into place, this is in my opinion, this is a talented team where I have a lot of faith for what it could look like this season. But at the same point, I don't want to get hopes up too high without seeing them playing an opponent.
I think for Washington, Jedd Fisch is a good X's and O's coach, and he built Arizona into the 10-win team they were last year, and they could have been even better. If they hadn't turned the ball over so much, they could have won at Mississippi State. If they'd gone for two or a couple different things that happened, they could have won at USC. Still, they were 9-3. They beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. This Washington team, as crazy as it is because the program was in the national championship game a season ago, is not as talented to me as the Arizona team that Jedd Fisch was working with a year ago. I'd take Noah Fifita over Will Rogers, though I think Will Rogers is solid. I think he's top half quarterback in the Big Ten Conference. You've got a receiving core that, again, capable, but is it as good as Tetero, McMillan, Jacob Cowing, and all that sort of stuff? I don't think so. But the biggest reason I think this particular matchup has such a big point spread and why Oregon fans should expect, like if Oregon plays to the way they're capable, they should beat Washington handily. It's the matchup between Oregon's defensive line and Washington's offensive line. And you and I have discussed this on Locked On College Football, which, by the way, you should make your second listen every day. I think that this Oregon defensive line is the best it has been since DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead stood on the front at the same time. I think you have experience, you have talent, you have a crazy amount of depth. You might not have a top 10 pick along this Oregon D-line, but I love the depth, high-end talent, a lot of blue chip guys up there, proven production, the depth. It's just all kind of there for me. That's where I think Oregon can really enforce their will on Washington is your strongest element might be Will Rogers throwing the football. He's got a good running back in Jonah Coleman. Jonah Coleman's really, really good. He's got a solid group of receivers, but if you can't throw him the football because you don't have time, that's how I think Oregon can take over. And that's what I think the biggest difference is between the Oregon-Washington games of last year when Penix had a lot of time to throw and what'll take place this year.
First of all, I don't miss those Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner days at all. I just want to make that very clear. I do not miss those days. But no, you're absolutely right, and that's the thing. Where Washington right now has two really solid pieces along the offensive line, in my opinion at least. Where we've seen Jerez Party, the San Diego State tackle who's going to play on the right side this year, be really, really good throughout spring practice, throughout fall practice. He's looked like a solid piece. He's looked like everything he was advertised as one of the top, 3, 4, 5, depending on where you look, tackles in the transfer portal, which was really nice. As we were talking about at practice today, actually, you wish you could have paired him with a Roger Rosengarten on the other side. That would have been really nice, but
or a Parker Brailsford at center.
Or a Parker Brailsford at center. Actually, center is not necessarily where I have the biggest concerns if Landon Hatchett is healthy, where he's a really talented piece, and Ryan Grubb trusted him enough to use him as a true freshman. The issue is he got hurt in December while prepping for the Sugar Bowl, and that's its own set of problems. But then at left guard, you've got Gard Memelar, who's a really nice piece. I like him a lot. The questions for me are at left tackle and right guard right now, where Landon at center it's up in the air. If he's healthy, I've seen him practicing for the last few days at this point, and it seems like they're still ramping him up, which is a good sign. Where Enoch Vimahai had a lot of questions around him, during his time at Ohio State. I want to see how he plays in this Brennan Carroll scheme. And then at left tackle, where replacing a first-round pick in Troy Fautanu, very, very difficult. The guys they have behind him are very untested. You got a redshirt freshman in Soane Fasolo. You've got a guy who was a former junior college All-American, Max McCree, but he had to take some time off for personal reasons from the game and go support his family, which was going through a really, really rough time. And then the only other option right now at the end of this position is a true freshman who I think has outstanding size and should get a little bit of an opportunity is Justin Hilkema. But that's a guy, a 3-star recruit from California who has looked good in fall camp. I'll give him that. But it's a whole different, situation when you're testing them against the Big Ten.
Coming up, we'll get more in depth on Washington's team and where their strengths are. How could they, if at all, push Oregon in the border war matchup this year in Eugene? That's coming up next. Coming up right now is Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting Major League Baseball tickets faster and easier. The prices that are on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, which is better for you, the consumer. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Whatever you are looking for, you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. So take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, Create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Look at us synced up. Oh, we were like that close. We were that close to the perfectly timed second segment sips. But let's go on the offensive side of the ball first, Roman, and what Washington has, because this is a capable passing attack. And look, by Big Ten standards, it might even be above average, pending the offensive line being able to protect on a week-to-week basis. That's why I think the Michigan matchup in the national title game rematch in Seattle for the Huskies is going to be a tough matchup. But tell Oregon fans what you expect from this passing attack. Certainly it won't be where it was last year. You don't have a first-round quarterback, first-round receiver, and two other pre-fourth-round NFL receivers in there to be drafted, but it's not the least capable passing attack in the Big Ten. If you put this Washington offense with Iowa's defense, you'd probably have a 9-10 win team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing where let's just go through these receivers one by one real fast. Where Denzel Boston was the best player on the field during spring practice. This is a guy that the previous coaching staff really liked a lot. They had him play a little bit, but Spencer, as you mentioned, when Roman Tomashoff, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, and Jeremy Bernard are ahead of you, yeah, it's going to be pretty tough to get on the field. It's crazy to come to that conclusion, right?
Turns out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Crazy, just insane. But with all those guys, Denzel is somebody who has kind of had to take a back seat. Now he's added a lot of weight, become a lot more physical, but is somebody who looks a lot like Rome in terms of similar size profile. He's listed at 6'4", 207, and is a guy that can really move and has done a good job getting open in a whole lot of different ways against, in my opinion, a guy who's going to be one of the better corners in this conference, and if he shoots press off, where he's been really impressive to watch every day at spring practice, every day this fall. He's found a way to make a really nice grab. Jeremiah Hunter on the other side. Spencer, a guy you and I
good player.
A very good player. We had our Cal agendas on Locked On Pac-12 back
yes,
in the day.
Once upon a time. And by the way, some Oregon fans might remember Jeremiah Hunter from the Cal team a year ago and in 2022. Like, I think the Jeremiah Hunter factor, like, good player. I think if he's your number 2 receiver, I think you have a good core. If he's your number 3 receiver, I think you have a great receiving core. If he's your number 1, it's okay. It's solid, but at the very least, an experienced quarterback in Will Rogers, who played under Mike Leach, has thrown a lot of passes in his career. He's going to have some guys to throw the ball to, and Hunter is one of them. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the thing where Jeremiah has been really impressive as well, where he's a guy where, I coined Denzel the best player on the field at spring practice. Jeremiah was second. Jeremiah was also really, really impressive. He's got nice body control. He's really physical. He's really strong over the middle of the field. And he's a guy who can go make plays at all 3 levels of the field, like Denzel Boston. We're having those 2 guys where he is the number 2 receiver. And it feels like, at the end of the year, we're probably going to see Denzel with most catches, yards, touchdowns. None of that would surprise me. But Jeremiah is not going to be far behind him. He's a really talented player. And it always felt like he was somewhat limited by the quarterback play, which is something that I think is a really exciting prospect for his final season. Is what's it going to look like with a guy who is at the very least above average in this conference, and Will Rogers. And that brings us to Giles Jackson, somebody who has never really gotten an extended amount of playing time over his career at Washington, mainly because of the guys ahead of him, just like we talked about. But he's somebody who is really reliable. They like to move him around the formation. He's very, very athletic, and a guy who runs really crisp routes as, a 5th, 6th year senior at this point. And when they throw him in the slot, he's somebody who can move around, get outside. He can get vertical. He can do a whole bunch of different things, and is just a very, very good player at all 3 levels of the field. I know I just said the same thing about all 3 guys, but that's what he's shown to be. And he's somebody who this coaching staff, one of the reasons I'm so high on this receiving core, is this coaching staff has proven during their time in Arizona that they can make it work with players that, don't necessarily have elite size like Giles, where they find ways to get him open with scheme and with his athleticism, and they'll put him in a position to make plays.
I think the receiving core is what worries me the most because of the offensive line concerns we've talked about. Like, is Jonah Coleman going to be able to thrive the way he did behind 2 NFL caliber guys on Arizona's offensive line last year? Maybe not. I think Jedd Fisch is a good scheme coach when it comes to the run game and the pass game, but you can only do so much if your offensive line is outmatched, and I think they will be against Oregon. The secondary matchup against these Washington receivers, I like Oregon's outside corners a lot. I think it'll come down to that nickel position, and that was one that Washington took advantage of a lot last year, or getting wide receivers on safeties. I don't think they have the same sort of depth to burn Oregon safeties to the level that they did in the matchups a season ago, but still, it's definitely the number one aspect you have to stop. Like Jedd Fisch, I think, wants to be balanced as the year goes on. I won't be surprised if Will Rogers has to throw the ball 35 to 40 times because of the way that the games go, if they get behind it all, or with the offensive line. They might have to work in some quick hitters and whatnot. But I think Oregon matches up a lot better this year with their secondary against Washington's receivers. But I want to flip this around because Oregon has the best receiving core by my money in the country, and at least in the Big Ten, top 2 or 3 in the country at the very least, with Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden and whatnot. Ephesians Prysock is a transfer from Arizona, good football player, but who else does Washington have left to try to guard the Oregon wideouts?
So it's probably going to be Elijah Jackson at cornerback 2 on the other side. Oregon fans might remember him from the Sugar Bowl, making the play to send Washington to the national championship. That was fantastic play.
The swat over the top against Texas, that was him?
Yep, that's him. So really talented player, has always been somewhat limited by injuries, but when healthy, he's shown that he's got a really high ceiling. He's somebody I really like. I love cornerbacks coach John Richardson. He's done a fantastic job getting these guys right. I've been really, really impressed with him. And, it's just Washington's defensive staff has been such a major upgrade in total. And I'm going to get there because that's my favorite thing.
It's quite the staff. It's quite, I don't know if they have the playmakers yet at all 3 levels, but boy, they got the staff.
Absolutely. The interior of the defensive line is, I would say, the biggest question on this defense. But when I look at let's, as you asked, let's take it through the secondary. Jordan Shaw's been playing in the nickel. That's a guy who transferred from Indiana to Arizona, from Arizona up to Washington following Jedd Fisch. And he's somebody who I was really impressed with. He's a little bit undersized, but he moves really well in space and is able to really do a good job on Giles Jackson in a phone booth, do a whole lot of different things. But where I really love what this secondary can do is its safety. They've got Cameron Fabiculon and McEllisteen back, who are 2 guys that Cam Fab was really, really nice last year. He really came on. McEllisteen is a guy who, hasn't necessarily ever gotten a really high snap count, but has been able to make a lot of plays. And then they went out and they got 2 high-level transfers. They got Justin Harrington from Oklahoma, who's a really talented guy, 7th-year senior because of a couple of red shirts and a knee injury. 7th, yes. Where
you ever see Father of the Bride?
No.
Oh, the original is Steve Martin, and they're in this big mansion of their new in-laws, and he's asking him where the bathroom is, and the guy says, 7th door on the left. 2nd? 7th.
Yeah, 7th. And I love Justin Harrington. He's been a really nice veteran addition to this group. Really talented guy, can come down to the box and play, linebacker if you needed to in the Steve Belichick defensive scheme, which is just beautiful, I must add. And then, it has nothing to do with me being a lifelong Patriots fan, by the way.
No, couldn't possibly be that.
No, nothing. I swear it has nothing to do with that. And then the other safety they brought in is Cameron Broussard, who is first team All Big Sky at Sacramento State. That dude can play. I've been so impressed with him, where they move him around all over the formation. I've seen him line up in the 9. I've seen him line up as an inside linebacker. I've seen him line up at safety in the nickel. He moves around a lot, and at 6'3", 205, and with Harrington at 6'3", 220, these are guys that are big, physical, and move very, very well. And I don't know how much man coverage they're going to play on wide receivers per se, but those are guys that have really caught my eye and are just true playmakers.
Well, despite all of Roman's glowing words, and though there is some talent over there, Oregon's still a big favorite. I'm going to make Roman make a soft, not a hard prediction coming up next. And Washington's not going to be top of the Big Ten this year. But when could they get back to that level? We'll answer that question next. After we talk about eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, Roman, let's start with a soft, not going to hold you to this, just kind of wanting to get an idea of where Washington's heads are at with this Oregon game. If I asked you to give a soft score prediction of that November 30th meeting at Autzen Stadium, in which Oregon is a 19.5-point favorite, your answer is what?
Give me 42-28 Oregon.
42-28. 28's a lot. 28 is...
It is a lot.
28 is a lot. How much of that is coming once the starters have been pulled?
Yeah, my crystal ball over here is getting a little foggy now.
Okay, 42-28. Is it the interior of that Washington defense that gives you pause about how they could slow down Oregon? Because I think this Oregon offense is going to be 85 to 90% of what it was a year ago. I think your receiving core can be at the same sort of level. Your tight ends are somehow going to be better because they're mostly the same, but guys are just going to be better versions of themselves. Offensive line projected by a lot of different sites as one of the 10 best in college football. You got a close to 70% completion guy in Dylan Gabriel. Great running backs. Like, all the weapons are there. What worries you the most about this Oregon team for Washington?
It's the defensive line. It has to be. Where every single question I have about this Husky team comes down to the offensive line. Like, Spencer, if I told you in January of this year that I would be sitting on Washington's practice field watching Bill Belichick help Washington install their run fits, you would have called me a psycho.
Oh, yeah, that's something.
But that's something I watched last week with my own two eyes, and I could not believe it. So the defense, I know it's going to be well coached. I know they're going to find a way to make it work, but I still worry so much about this offensive line. And I think that the defense at the end of the year, at the points per game, is a little bit higher than I think it might end up being. It's because of short fields. It's because teams were able to force turnovers, whether it be off strip sacks or interceptions because balls needed to be rushed. That's where my biggest concern is right now. And I feel that this Oregon defense would have an opportunity to take advantage of some of those things. That's I would say that's kind of where all my concerns lie at this point in time.
Let's look long-term here, because I think in the Big Ten, Washington, it took them a while, but they eventually got up to the upper echelon of the Pac-12, stayed there for a time, then they dropped down very briefly, and then they got right back up. The Big Ten has always been a very top-heavy league, and Oregon goes in as what I've described for a while as a Tier 1 program of you should be a conference title contender every single year. Now, Washington is not going to be that this year, but if you look out at Jedd Fisch and the landscape of the Big Ten with USC, I don't really even count UCLA because I just don't think I don't think their commitment to football is there. I really don't. Like, Chip Kelly left being a head coach to go be an OC. You can blame that on Chip, and he left them in a bad spot. I think there are some valid criticisms there. Truth of the matter is UCLA does not care that much about football, but I think Oregon, Washington, USC, if they are all run correctly and they're hitting their ceiling as programs, or for Oregon, a program, of course, I think that's a team, a program that can be a Big Ten champion in a given year. That includes Ohio State and Michigan. And when does Washington get back to that sort of level? When do you expect Jedd Fisch to have them there?
I think 2026 is the year that I'm looking at right now, where I really like all the building blocks that are in place on this team in terms of the younger guys, where, you think about Damon Williams. Adam Muhammad is a guy that I'm sure Oregon fans have heard a lot about. He's been a really, really impressive running back that Scotty Graham had down in Arizona, took with him up here, and is a guy where you look at his recruiting rankings, as I know Oregon fans love to do, and say, that's not a player. And then you watch him for 30 seconds and you say, that's the same guy that was an 82 on 247? Yeah, no, that doesn't add up. where I love watching him. There are a lot of impressive younger players at receiver, whether it be Keith Reynolds, Audric Harris, Rasheed Williams. It's a really nice core that they have going on there that have been building with Damon. And then I look at the defense. I look at some of the younger guys that they have on that side of the ball, whether it be Kamori House at linebacker, some of these younger edge rushers, guy like Isaiah Ward, who could be around for a couple more years, is somebody that I'm really looking at. Jaden Wayne was a really nice add in the transfer portal. And then some of these guys.
That's a name Oregon fans probably remember because Oregon was after him heavily coming out of high school because he's from the state of Washington. He went down to Mario in Miami, and he is back at Washington now. And we'll see what his career. I mean, he didn't really do much in his true freshman season this past year, and he just decided to transfer to Washington. But I'm sure that's a name that'll. There are plenty of diehard Oregon recruiting fans that I've got listening to or watching the show. I'm sure when they heard the name Jaden Wayne, same thing happened when I heard the name Jaden Wayne. Like, oh, I remember that guy. That could be a dude one day.
No, absolutely. And I've been impressed with him so far. He's got all the makings of somebody who could be a future 3-down player out on the edge. Not sure how much we're going to see from him this year. Lance Holtzclaw is another guy that I really like out there who's shown to be a really nice pass rusher. And then I really look in the secondary right now where I like some of the corners that they've got in the 2025 class. Dylan Robinson. Oh man. But that dude's film is special. I love watching him. That's a guy who I really believe can come in and make an impact next season. And then I look at safety, and they've got I was going to say quintuple, but that's not really just the proper word to use here. They've got 4 guys that I believe can really make an impact at safety. Where
a quartet.
Yeah, a quartet. There we go. I can't talk, but thank you. I appreciate you. That's why you're here.
All that academic prowess, and you can't talk.
Peyton Waters, Paul Menke, and Rashawn Clark were all 4-star recruits at one point. I know Paul Menke dropped down to a 3-star around signing day, but they're all really talented players. Peyton Waters is a guy who, hey, shout out Birmingham High School, where I went and played high school baseball as well, where he was somebody who came in early for spring practice, looked really, really good, and somebody who just looks like a major player. And it felt like that was one of the reasons they brought in 2 transfers at safety, so they can, take it a little bit more slowly with Peyton, maybe get him that redshirt year this season and just kind of bring him along and have him be a full go next year. That'd be a lot of fun. And behind them, Rashawn Clark, who's a local guy that signed at Arizona, 4-star product that transferred up here once Fisch got up here. Raheem Wright, same boat from California, but a really impressive athlete. And like I said, Menke, who was at Duke, decommitted when Mike Elko took the A&M job and also comes back up here. Where there are a lot of really talented players on the back end of this defense. And Zajus Reyna, I'll just get one more, 2025 guy in there, is a really impressive linebacker from the state, number 1 player here in Washington in the 2025 cycle. Jedd Fisch's staff did something that is truly unprecedented at Washington. They went out and they really pushed hard on the recruiting trail. This is the best class at Washington.
Chris Peterson recruited.
Well, I was going to say this is the best class that they've had. Spencer, that last class was 5 years ago now.
Yeah, that's true. And that was the last question I wanted to ask you is, Oregon fans for the last couple of years, I think noted, and it'll hopefully from a Duck fan standpoint, and I think it will come to a head this year, which is, hey, Washington's not building for the long term here. They're not recruiting at a very high level. And now you have all the transfer portal departures, and sure, a lot of guys have come in from Arizona, but that's part of the reason that Oregon is such a big favorite in this game in Eugene. Should Oregon fans expect Washington to be a part of more recruiting battles for the sorts of players that the Ducks go after, particularly on the West Coast?
On the West Coast, yes. I don't know what it's going to look like, in Texas and in Florida, where the Ducks have established some of their other pipelines. Where, they're pushing for a 4-star safety, Ladarian Clarity, who's out of Florida. They were in the battle for Andrew Marsh. We'll kind of see how that one turns out. A really talented wide receiver from Texas. Donovan Olabode, who's originally from Illinois, goes to IMG. Who's a guy they were pushing for really hard. Sounds like they still are. Even though he's committed to Mizzou. We'll see how that works out. But Jedd is really trying to broaden Washington's recruiting base and has done a really good job of doing that so far, where we haven't seen him get that big signature win in Texas or in Florida or in some of these other parts of the country just yet. But yeah, I really do expect Washington, especially if, everything looks on film the way that I expect it to this year from what I've seen at practice, that going down the line, Washington is going to become a major player for some of these top end West Coast recruits.
Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies, keeping all of you Duck fans out there informed with Oregon's Big Ten rival, because that's the way that football works now, apparently. Roman, appreciate the time and insights, my man.
Spencer, as always, thanks for having me.
Thanks for making Locked On Ducks your first listen of the day. Go make Locked On College Football your second. I do host over there as well with a lineup of guests that cascade through to bring you the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.